It begins not in the smoke-filled, booming mills of Pittsburgh, but in the frigid, modest town of Dunfermline, Scotland, where Andrew Carnegie was born on November 25, 1835. He was the son of a master weaver whose art was being brutally choked by the relentless machinery of the Industrial Revolution. Young Andrew's childhood was impoverished, yet filled with the stern, enduring values his parents instilled in him: a reverence for books, the sacredness of hard work, and the social justice that flowed from the radical Chartist movement. By 1848, the financial straits were too bitter to bear. The Carnegies pooled their meager resources and, desperate and hopeful, sailed to America and came to settle in Allegheny, Pennsylvania, just beyond Pittsburgh, a booming, smoky city and a very hub of American industry. Andrew was just 12, but he went to work immediately. His initial job was as a bobbin boy at a mill for meager $1.20 a week. It was hard labor, but the young Scotsman was determined to learn and improve himself. He went in the evening to the private library of a local colonel, a privilege granted to working boys, and read every book he could find. It was the beginning of a lifetime's exposure to books and would ultimately decide his destiny. His ascension was meteoric. Soon he was a telegraph messenger boy, a job requiring speed and an incredible memory for addresses and routes. The job, giving him a glimpse of the activity of the business world, soon led to his actual break. Working as a personal telegrapher and assistant to Thomas A. Scott, superintendent of the Western Division of the mighty Pennsylvania Railroad. Working for Scott, Carnegie learned about finance management and the vast potential of America's industrial future. With Scott's guidance, he made his first masterful investments in railroads, sleeping cars on railroads, derricks for oil, and bridges. It was the profit from these shrewd ventures, many times larger than his railroad salary, that became the true basis of his fortune. When the American Civil War dissolved, the nation was prepared for unprecedented expansion, and it needed one thing above all else: steel. Carnegie's vision was not blind to the future. Iron bridges were satisfactory, but steel was stronger, more durable, and with the new Bessemer process, less expensive to produce on a large scale. By the 1870s, Carnegie had immersed himself entirely in steel production. His was a simple and ruthless philosophy: maintain low cost of production by vertically integrating, owning raw materials, coal mines, transportation, and mills, and price lower than anyone else. The result was the Carnegie Steel Company, the largest and most efficient steel mill in the world. He was a captain of industry, the man whose beams and rails built America's skyscrapers, bridges, and transcontinental railroads. But this prosperity rested on profound contradiction. To be as productive and profitable as he could, Carnegie embraced brutal working conditions. Wages were held low, days were long, and he resisted unions fiercely. The Homestead Strike of 1892 remains a stain on his reputation. Absent in Scotland on vacation, his business associate, Henry Clay Frick, locked out striking workers and contracted an armed guards, resulting in a violent, bloody battle. The outcry was deafening. The champion of the working man had trampled him beneath his overwhelming might. There was the internal struggle. Even after building his empire, Carnegie had fought with the moral issue of extensive wealth. At the start of his professional life, he had taken philosophy, spent the first third of life learning, the second third accumulating wealth, and the final third donating it for the greater good. He wrote his fabled essay, The Gospel of Wealth, in 1889. His paper detailed his radical conviction that the wealthy were ethically bound to spend their surplus wealth in their lifetimes to benefit society, and not save or leave it to heirs. The man who dies thus rich dies disgraced, he wrote famously. Wealth, in his opinion, was a trust fund, and the most effective way to disperse it was through institutions which permitted people to help themselves. In 1901, at age 66, Carnegie decided the accumulation era was over. He sold his company, Carnegie Steel, to financier J.P. Morgan for a whopping sum, about $480 million, over $18 billion today, and established the U.S. Steel Corporation. Carnegie was now technically the world's richest man, and he immediately retired from business to focus exclusively on his moral work. His philanthropic contributions were as innovative as his business acumen. Remembering the critical role a public library played in his own education, He championed the cause of public information above all else. His most lasting legacy was the endowing of over 2,500 public libraries throughout the English-speaking world. These Carnegie libraries were not gifts, they were partnership ventures. Carnegie paid for the building, but the community had to promise to continue the collection and maintain an operation, a system designed to ensure self-sufficiency and community involvement. But his philanthropy went much further than books. He invested his fortune in institutions that would have lasting influence. He founded Carnegie Mellon University. He developed the Carnegie Institution for Science to enable basic research. He gave vast sums to global peace work, creating the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, though the coming of World War I was a disastrous disappointment to his dreams of peace. He created the Carnegie Corporation of New York to manage the remainder of his fortune, ensuring that his philanthropy would continue beyond his death. When Andrew Carnegie passed away in 1919, he had given away approximately 90% of his fortune, keeping his word. He died very modestly by the standards of the robber barons, having actually lost enormous wealth that he believed would taint the owner as well as the recipient. He has left behind a double legacy: the brutal steel magnate whose methods made him famous, and the greatest philanthropist in history whose gifts have laid the educational and cultural foundations of modern society.